Human beings can survive in solitude, but to really thrive, they go out and they form communities. They don't do things alone, they like doing things together. The most basic unit of a community is a family. We all belong to families, you all belong to communities. Enter the geeks. The geeks are not happy with having everything only in the physical world. They want things in the virtual world. So they said, okay, let's start building virtual communities. Communities in the online space. But I'm talking about a time before the internet. Actually, I'm talking about a time before mobile devices. To an audience which is all digital natives, I don't think you can even imagine this time. You all grew up with the internet, you all grew up with mobile phones. But yes, there was a time before that. 1989, the first Indian online community was the bulletin board system. The bulletin board system was quite a challenge. People bought modems and they tried to put them on the phone lines which did not exist. You actually had to apply for a phone line and wait almost 8 or 10 years before you got a phone. So where do I connect? So once I have a modem and I've put this up, what do I do next? So the bulletin board systems are actually what formed or was the precursor to the internet. It allowed people, like-minded people, to come together, to have discussions, to share files, to share tips, to share tricks, and of course to share their knowledge, share amongst each other. And it was a very, very exciting time. One of the things that happened on these bulletin boards was conversations started. People actually, today what you use, you call it a forum, you call it a Yahoo group or a Google group, but this was happening way before the internet came in India. Internet did not come to India for a very, very long time. At the same time, we also saw, for the first time, women actually coming out, women who are in technology, coming out, using these bulletin boards and actually having conversations. In fact, some of the bulletin boards of that time catered specifically to the women. They were exclusive women-only groups. And it's not the point was not to keep the men out, but it was to allow the women to actually have conversations amongst themselves completely uninhibited. We reached a very strange stage. This community did not grow. It was a very small community. I'm sure none of you have heard of it before, but the BBSs did eventually become big. But it actually boiled down to, if I purchased a modem, I have a BBS. And everyone across the country started running a bulletin board system. It did eventually grow, and it became pan-India. And it grew to a point where the government actually came down and said, hey, you guys are borderline commercial. You're like running a mini internet service. Again, there was still no internet in the country. You're running something like the internet, and we don't like it, and we want to tax you. But that didn't last very long, because along came the internet. 15th of August, I call this Independence Day. This was our second independence. 15th of August 1995 is when the internet came to India. So 89 to 85, there was this thriving community of people communicating the way you do today on Facebook or Twitter or on other platforms, but it was minus that infrastructure. It was running on private infrastructure. I used to run a BBS which was on one computer which was in my bedroom. And I can tell you it was not very pleasant, because that modem would make a horrible screeching sound every few minutes. So gradually what happened is that community started fading away. And it faded away for a good reason. The internet replaced it. It lost its relevance, it was no longer needed, and it was gone. 1991, another very, very important year. There was another community boiling. It's what we call the OS revolution. There was this thing called Linux, which had just taken birth. People were confused. What is it? Does it work? Can I use it? But around the Linux community, the community that was born in 1991 became what today actually allows you to run the internet, including companies like Google and Facebook and Yahoo. They are all running open source software. They are all running Linux. In India, we didn't stay far behind. In 91, some people got copies of Linux. It was a very, very painful process. 41 3.5-inch floppies downloaded at an excruciating speed of 300 megabits per second. So it's, when you complain about the internet is slow, just keep that in mind. 300 Mbps. And that's megabits, not megabytes. But there was a thriving community. There was a group that was formed which was called the India Linux Users Group. And this group was not just restricted to one city, it was all across the country. These are some photographs of the Linux India group in Delhi, and excellent work was done by this community. Many of these communities, they start very, very small. They actually start as a mailing list. I don't see people physically getting together, but they start as a mailing list. What happens on this mailing list? People ask questions, people get answers, people find, they start gaining their knowledge in the world of technology. The group goes out of its way to help others. At the time when the Linux community was formed in India, people would actually say, hey, what's running on your computer? Let me see if I can put Linux on it. Let me see if I can make you work in a better way. And people would go out and help others. They would create awareness by running little seminars, by little events, by teaching people what you can actually do with Linux. Because it's a free operating system. It's something that you don't have to pay a corporation any money for. If you read the freedoms that are associated with free software, the first thing is that you are encouraged to give it away. And when I say free, I mean the true word free. So it's better described in Hindi. It's either muft, which means you don't have to pay for it, or it's mukt, which means it's true freedom. You are allowed to do anything with that piece of software. Take it, break it, sell it, do anything that you want with it. No restrictions. The only restriction is that you can't restrict somebody else from doing what they want with it. That's how free it is. So these geeks were in the online world for a very long time, hiding behind their terminals, talking to each other, and they decided to come out and said, okay, let's also start meeting up. And then at these events, there would be people coming out and talking and meeting, and it was not always serious stuff. I mean, you put two geeks together and the first thing you hear is who's ordering pizza. So they come out, they have fun, and that was a thriving community. Interestingly, from 1996 till date, the community survives. Don't forget, communities also have a life. They come and they will go away. You are at an event called TED or TEDx. It's a community. The event started at a point, it will continue, and it will fade away. It will lose its relevance at some point of time. It will go away. The event is the community. In the case of TED, the event is the community. In the case of Foster Inn, which was a free and open source software community set up in the early, I would say, around 96 in Bangalore. This event became the first international open source event in India. It attracted people from all over the world. Speakers, people like Linus Torvalds, has actually put a statement out saying that if there's any event that I want to speak at, it would be FOSS.in. He doesn't speak at events. There are others who are very, very, I would say, lack of a better word, senior in the Linux community. They have all spoken at FOSS.in. So FOSS.in actually nurtured the Indian software community, the open source software community. What you see here is a photograph, a very interesting photograph. The audience is on the stage. The entire audience is on the stage. The few people who are left out, who are not on stage, it's not because they couldn't fit the stage, it's because they are not open source users or contributors. The person sitting in the middle of that chair just asked one question at a time, and he kept going till he got the entire audience on stage. Do you use an open source product? And people said yes. I said, okay, come on stage. Have you ever asked somebody an open source question? And somebody said yes. Okay, come on stage. So slowly he had the entire audience on stage. This was a very, very crucial turning point in the Indian open source community. It's the point that converted us from being consumers to being contributors. Can you imagine a small country like Sri Lanka? If you've heard of Google Summer of Code, it's something that they do for students. They invite bids from students for projects, and they give the students about $50,000, and they say, okay, you can go out and do your project. For many years, contribution from India, 0. Sri Lanka, 10, 15, 20. India, 0. And it continued like this for a very long time. FOSS.in changed that. Last year, we had 110 from India, the maximum from any country ever. Now, events can get to be quite boring. I know you've been sitting here all day and you've got many more hours to sit here. But what we introduced at FOSS.in was what we call the corridor track. We took the event outside of the conference. It's the precursor to an unconference, what became later the bar camp. No structure, no fixed speakers. You interact, you go out, you meet people, you do what you want. In fact, if you put a bunch of geeks together, this is what they'll do. We created the hackathon. Get the geeks together, give them food, give them an idea, and get them to code. Fantastic products have come out because of this. The browsers that you all love, Chrome, the browser that you all love, Firefox, the browser that you hate, Internet Explorer. That didn't come out from FOSS.in, but the other two did. Sadly, like all good things, FOSS.in came to an end. A very, very logical end. In 2012, it had been 12 years of running that event. It was time to shut down because the job was done. The job was to get people aware about open source software, to get people to start using open source software. And once you've got them aware and you've got them using, to get them to contribute to open source software. Once all three things were done, the job was done, the event lost its relevance, it had to shut down. But the good thing is that open source software has gone mainstream. When you leave your college and go out and look for a job, one of the skills that they're going to ask you, have you ever used any open source software? Microsoft will hire you faster if you say, I'm an open source developer, than if you say I'm a Microsoft developer. In conclusion, what I would like to say to you is, I want you to go out and build communities. And there's a few ingredients that go into building a good community. These ingredients are, the first thing you ask yourself is, do I belong to this community? Because if you don't have that sense of belonging, you're not going to be able to create a community. You come together because of a common idea. The idea could be anything. It could be software, it could be food, it could be a dream, it could be absolutely anything at all. The idea brings you together. You form your community by coming together. You're like-minded people. So you will go out and you will look for others who are in the same state, and you want to bring them together with you. Everyone has spoken about it. The passion, the hunger, the fire in the belly. You need that. You need that for your community to survive. The need to share information. You will be amazed at the same consultant who will come in a suit and tie and will charge you a couple of lakhs to solve a minor problem. When you tell him that you're running an open source software, he'll give you free support. So the need to go out and share, and it's something that you will find is extremely satisfying, extremely satisfying. Always turn around and ask yourself the question, what's in it for me? And as long as you're doing that, you will build an excellent community, a community that can survive, and whether you make money or not, I can tell you, satisfaction is definitely guaranteed. Thank you.